It's time to unleash the expert. What is he an expert on? Relationships, sex, spirituality, and rediscovering yourself beyond the trauma. Get ready to unleash more purpose, passion, and pleasure in your life. Here's the expert himself, Mr. Brannon Patrick.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Brannon Patrick Show. I have with me today one of my favorite people, somebody who has just changed my life in more ways than she knows, and she's incredible. So I have Corinne Grillo with me today. Corinne, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Brandon. That's quite a sweet opening.
Well, it's all true. So I want to give just a little bit of background as to how I know you, and then I want to ask you a few questions, okay?
Okay.
So Corinne, actually, she put on the first retreat where I went down to Peru and experienced plant medicine. And I had no idea when I was going there. I was pretty naive. And my wife, Jenny, was the one that found Corinne and was following Corinne and told me, like, hey, we should go to this Peru thing. And I had no idea that I was going to meet somebody like Corinne when I went. And the plant medicine was amazing and changed my life. But also just seeing Corinne's example of her career, and she's a fellow psychotherapist with me, but also her deep connection and her spiritual connection and her willingness to just be authentic blew me away. So, the plant medicine mixed with a person like Corinne and being in Peru in the Sacred Valley, and it was just like, whoa, this is amazing. So Corinne, I just want to tell you, you're really authentic. You don't shy away from being you. I appreciate that. And your platform that Jenny started following was about angels. Can you speak about that a little bit and how that kind of came to be?
Yeah, well, I think that was my first departure out of the normal recipe that we're given in lives of, you get a good career and you stay solid and, fight the good fight out there and show a good face. And I was out there doing the standard psychotherapy thing. And then I witnessed a miracle. I had a big angel experience, and that shifted things. After that, there's something inside of me woke up, and I was less able to tolerate bullshit, I guess, the lie, I guess, um, the inauthentic nature. And I tried to resist this spiritual thing that was going on because it was pretty it was a lot to confront when you're a traditional psychotherapist doing your thing, and then I'm sitting in sessions with clients and I start feeling angels come in and hearing them, and uh and and I didn't know, like, okay, should I say this out loud? And of course at first I was like, no, I'm not going to tell them that there's angels in the
Right.
room. This is ridiculous.
Right.
Uh, but over time, I eventually caved because it wasn't going away. So I remember, sitting with a client and going, okay, look, I know this sounds weird. But I feel like there's angels in the room. They have a message. Do you want to hear it? Yes or no?
Love
And
it.
a lot of these people had maybe a specific kind of religion or no religion at all. And so it was very awkward in the beginning. So that's how it got started, when I started learning to listen and trust what was happening and just owning what was happening as opposed to resisting.
So you kind of, I mean, you had the guts to finally go there. But it almost sounds like you had no choice. Like you were given this gift and this calling to do that, and it was like, I just got to go for it now. What were the responses? Like, how did people respond to it?
Um, they responded. It was just pure magic once I started owning it. Because I went in so kind of awkwardly, just like, hey, I know this is weird, guys. I'm not trying to force anything on you, but it's just happening. Do you mind if I share? Because sometimes the information that's coming through had nothing to do with what the person's saying.
Right.
So I just started going for it, and people, um, not only that, but I started doing healing work too, because the angels wanted to kind of help slough off some of the emotions. And I remember one woman who
So
was crying.
the angels coming in and actually doing the healing work in the room, and so
Yeah,
you're just kind of like a kind of the middle person to facilitate that?
exactly. I had to like be the one that was awkward, the awkward person who's willing to say weird stuff out loud. And do you mind if we just try this thing, do some breathing with me? And can we just ask the angels to come and take off some of this pain, some of this stuff?
Right.
So I remember this woman who had postpartum and she was crying every day, couldn't sleep. I mean, so depressed. And it had been going on for 6 months. She said she was crying every day. And so I said, all right, there's an angel here. Do you mind? And she's like, at that stage, it's like, well, they'll try anything. People,
Yeah,
that's what I found
sure.
is like, people are willing to go for it. Like,
She's
who
so
cares?
broken, she's open.
Yeah, but she's
Yeah.
like, hey, I'll try whatever. I'm like, okay, let's try this shit. So we did. And she called me the next day. She said, last night's the first night I haven't cried in months. And then I would see her every week. Everything transformed for her after that day. And it was about 15 minutes of angel work altogether. And
Mhm.
so those little events, I mean, I witnessed physical healings, someone who had bad sciatica all of a sudden could like stretch. She's like, I don't think that worked. And I was like, well, probably didn't, but you want to just try and give it a stretch. And she was able to touch her toes. And
Mhm.
and so when those things start happening, then it's like that's validation. And I think that that's what's required of all of us. We take those first steps, take the leap of faith, trust you're going to be okay. You're not going to lose your license right away.
Right.
Your friends still might like you at some
Right,
point.
right. It just makes me think, Corinne, about how many people have important gifts that but they spend their whole life never actually allowing those gifts to come forth because they don't have the courage to do what it takes. From my experience, there's usually like a threshold that you have to overcome in order to
Mhm.
realize those type of gifts.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like you
Yeah.
didn't know how this was all going to shake out. Yeah.
No, I didn't because I was still like, I'm in session live with someone and I'm just saying, hey, you want to try something? Because I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just learning to listen and trust angels. And I had so much belief because I witnessed this miracle already. And I had already had such my own healing that I was already in faith. I already trusted. I didn't trust myself, but I
Right.
trusted spirit at least.
Right.
And yeah, so I think for all of us, like no matter what threshold or cliff we're about to dive off of, we get the nudges and we pull back from the ledge like I'm not ready. And then yeah, when we do and you cross that threshold um and give it some blind faith, it's amazing the results that could happen.
Yeah.
Within a few months, people were I remember people flying their family members in to come and see me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, you got to come talk to this therapist, but she's not quite a therapist, but there's
There's
something
a little bit extra there for you.
so extra. Yeah, so that was really amazing and cool. And that's when life went from being ordinary to started becoming extraordinary.
Yeah, so talk about that. So this led to a full platform that you've had online, an amazing platform
Mhm,
in helping you really scaled this up. So it
mhm.
wasn't just the one-on-one in your therapy sessions. So how did that happen?
It's just more atrociously awkward steps to trusting my guidance because what started happening in my sessions was it just felt like too much energy. It was like too much. Some people were like punch drunk at the end and would have
Uh,
to like walk around the block because it was like so intense. And then spirit was saying it's because you're supposed to reach more people. Like you need to share this energy and
Interesting.
not just one on one. So they showed me this vision and I didn't believe it. They showed me this vision of me of light going from like my posse, my invisible posse over oceans. And
Oh,
at the
wow.
time I didn't have a vision for this. Like, what are you talking? Like, that's crazy. So again, I just started again taking the steps, trusting, and I was in full resistance because I don't like that to be the center of attention. I it was already awkward for me to witness as many miracles as I had because people were confusing um the miracles with my power versus the divine power,
Oh, yes. Yep.
you know?
Know what you're
And
talking about. Yep.
yeah, so I've always kind of been not into like being the center, and I think that's what drove me to try and teach other people how to work with spirit to create massive miracles in their own hearts, minds, and lives. And that's been really my passion, to take the power. I don't want that power because the power doesn't belong to me; it belongs to all of us. And it's so wild because I was not a religious person, but
Right.
this is just from practice and truth. And so since then, yeah, I've been teaching and training internationally for people how to open up.
Well, so you said two things there that I really I want to highlight. One is, and I can relate a little bit in my own work. I try to use my own intuition and my own gifts, and then people like give me praise and tell me I'm awesome, and I'm like, no, 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 like really, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to. This isn't me. This is God working through me in many
Yeah.
ways. Um, but to
Yeah.
yeah, to scale it out, to then all of a sudden start to do things to actually create this vision, Corinne.
Mhm.
I imagine in many ways it was exhilarating and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
Uh, as all good things are.
Yeah,
Yes. All
yeah.
the best things are extremely terrorizing. That whole threshold, all of that, everything that we've just discussed, probably the most provocative, terrorizing moments that I've been through. Now I'm used to putting myself through terrorizing
You
things. Like
get
I,
used to it, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
you get used to it, right? You take those big leaps of faith. I mean, you've done a lot in your own career to know that feeling of, gosh, this is a really wild, um, big idea. Is it going to work? Who knows? And you put your bets down, you know?
Well, I remember the group that I did with you, and I could feel almost your frustrations sometimes where you're like, you just wanted to scream from the rooftops, like, just go for it. Like, just put yourself out there. You might fail, you might stumble down the cliff for a while, but eventually you're gonna fly. Um, and
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's easy from like it's easy kind of to say from your standpoint because you've done it and you've done it again and again and again, and you realize it's not that terrifying, right? And I totally agree with you. If God's calling you to something, then absolutely. Um,
Yes.
okay, I want to shift gears just a little bit. You said you weren't a religious person, and I wouldn't, and tell me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't consider you a religious person still. Um,
I'm
so
not.
you're a very spiritual person. You talk to angels all the time. Um, so so maybe talk about the difference. Like, what's the difference between being a religious person and being really connected to spirit?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, I don't just talk to angels. I talk to all the things now. I talk to mountains, trees, whoever's willing to listen and help me out. The answer is yes. But uh but yeah, for me the difference is the difference between a belief system and a knowing.
Hmm.
um or an indoctrination, right? So we have our indoctrination, which I grew up a little Catholic, and deconstructed.
I don't know what you mean by that at all, Corinne.
Which part?
The indoctrination. I have no idea what you're
You
talking
don't
about.
know what I'm talking about,
I'm
right?
just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We'll Google it. Let's Google the
Yeah.
indoctrination that can happen with religion, right?
Yeah.
So so I think that's the difference. And there's something inside of us that can make a very authentic connection with spirit that I didn't know about, you know. Everything I learned before that was either religious or like I've always been interested and curious about mystical, magical things. I've had a, history of like reading the books, but as far as having this whole body awareness opening up thing, that's the difference. So now the spirituality comes, for me, if we're going to define it, comes from a very authentic, personal, unique place inside of us. And I always just say there's no one way to experience it or to frame it in your own mind,
Yeah.
um, but it's there for all of us.
Wow, that is so important, I think, and deep for me, that there's a difference between indoctrination and knowing. And
Mm,
because sometimes I think when you're in a religion that's pretty rigid, they almost try to get to the point of that indoctrination is, now, this is, but there's a difference between those feelings. There's a difference between it being forced into you and shoved right into you, and this deep knowing that's already in you.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
It's just massive. The difference is massive. And since I've been so public, right, over the last I don't know how many years now, 8 years, 7 years, and seeing the different people, whether they're embracing of the work that I do or very triggered by the work that I do. And it's, of course, always the Christians that
Uh-huh.
are the absolute worst as
They're the
far as
most triggered because they're
the
the most
most triggered.
indoctrinated. Yeah.
Right. It's not the atheists. It's not
Yep.
even like the Satanists. Okay. It is the people who are the most fear-based are the ones, and the least accepting are are these folks. And it makes me
Isn't
really
that
sad. I
interesting?
didn't really realize the magnitude of the indoctrination until over the years, seeing what emails I get. And when I get the hate, it's always from them.
Could I go as far to say, and I'm not trying to judge anybody or anything like that, but that that indoctrination, if you drink it in, it breeds pride, which then gets in the way of
Mm,
being open to actually the knowing, to the feeling. Is that
yeah.
what do you think, Corinne?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to frame that, but yeah, when you've been indoctrinated you don't know the difference between knowing and believing,
Yeah.
and if your only recourse is looking at this book that was written a few thousand years ago and rewritten by
Many, many, many times.
many times by those exclusively by the elite, by the wealthy, the rich, the kings.
Toxic patriarchal systems that
Yes.
created this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're indoctrinated to think that's true, and those are doctrines meant for essentially keeping slaves in place.
Yeah.
Don't fight, don't
There's
resist,
an
and
agenda.
there's an agenda behind it, right? Now, again, this is like a departure. It's not so this is a difference between belief systems, and I've had to deconstruct a lot since I've been doing this work, um, because I used to be even a lot more inclusive and open to, if people would say, "Oh, you're dancing with the devil," I would be a lot more warm, or like, "Oh, okay, they're just doing their best." But after so many years and deconstructing as much as I have, when I see someone calling me a demon, what they're doing is being puppets of old kings that are trying to conquer other people's lands.
Ah,
And they're making them say, "Proclaim Jesus as your Lord and Savior, or we will kill you." And that's exactly what they did.
yeah.
So I can,
Wow.
yeah. So I feel the difference of the energy. And when people talk to me like that, I know it's colonizer speak. That's what it is.
Wow.
That's,
It's like the
yeah.
generational trauma just repeating itself again and again,
Yes.
even to this day.
Yes, and they don't know what they're doing because it's so unconscious because they've been indoctrinated. So I have so much compassion, but I no longer tolerate
Yeah.
any of that
Don't
hate, that
apologize.
hatred. No, because no, you can't use Jesus as a shield when you are coming from such a intensely dark and fear-based place. So I've had to kind of come to grips with all of that in my own work. Um, and there's a difference when people are trying to yell at me and say, "Oh, and the things that they hate are like when I just speak on love, right?
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
speak on love."
Yep. What's ironic is it's so ironic because Christ himself was a hippie who would talk and speak about these principles, and the believers, right? I put that in quotation mark, the
Hmm.
indoctrinated believers are the ones that crucified him, and
Hmm.
they're the ones that couldn't tolerate Christ himself. And so now the
Wow.
followers of Christ have taken that to so far, and
Mm.
they have all these systems, and now they're using it to really persecute people like you, Corinne, where you're just trying to channel truth and help people. And so it's really fascinating. It's interesting.
It is. It is so fascinating, and I'm actually pretty passionate about it. It's especially over the last year, just something clicked inside of me, and I was just like, wow, I need to be, in many ways more vocal.
We're
Eh,
bold. More
more
willing to
bold.
talk about it.
Yeah, more, I guess, be more willing to step on, I guess, people's toes if they don't like the truth that I'm speaking. Because when you say these things, someone's going to die, or you call someone a demon, do you really know what you're doing? Do
Right.
you know why you're doing it? Because you think it's about Jesus. That has nothing to do with Jesus.
Right. And you
It
realize
ha
the energy you're trying to put on that person when you're calling them a
Yeah.
demon and evil and all these
I
things.
mean, it's just like it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so sad, but the hearts, all of our hearts have been so wounded. There's so much fear. We're so afraid of being ourselves. We're so ashamed of ourselves for having all of these urges, whether it's a sex or all of the things. And all
Right.
of this is indoctrination. All of it. It's weird. So this is the difference. When people come at me, I know they're coming from a place of fear because they don't know. They only believe. Because
Yes.
people who know, they're not coming at anyone. They're just like, whoa, what's your unique perspective on
They're
who we
open.
are and love and this whole place we're in?
Mhm.
It's like a fantastical playground if we can all meet each other with beauty and curiosity as opposed to judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love the way that you put that, Corinne. And I mean, you're talking about the waters that I swim in a lot.
Oh yeah.
I mean, being here in Utah and
Mhm.
just talking about certain things. Going down to Peru, doing plant medicine with you. Um, you talk about a threshold. When I remember on the plane ride home thinking, how am I going to handle this? I just had the most profound spiritual, emotional healing experience of my life that is going to be looked down upon and judged as, wow, you're just a druggie in Peru or
Oh yeah.
whatever. And I just thought, same as you. It was like, fuck it. I'm going home. I'm going to just own it. I'm going to own it. I'm going to be honest.
Mhm.
And that actually has been awesome. It's
Yeah.
just like kind of what you're talking about with talking about angels in your work. It was like people responded however they were going to respond, but I was free and I felt like it actually helped other people. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah,
And yeah, that level of authenticity, just being who you are, being willing to put your neck all the way out, not just 6 inches, but like 10 feet. Here I am, and see if I survive
let's see
and
what happens from
see
there.
what happens. But see how, like, so for you, I mean, because I remember you kind of going through this dance when you're like, whoa, okay, I've been lied to, you
Yeah.
know, like, whoa, seeing things from a whole different perspective. And I remember you kind of going through that threshold of encountering yourself versus your culture, right?
I was indoctrinated, but
Yeah.
I was indoctrinated, Corinne, but I also the knowing was there inside of me. And so
Hmm.
and those things actually contradicted. And so this wrestle of like, well, do I go along with the indoctrination forever? But
Hmm.
I can't because the knowing is there. And the
Yeah.
knowing of the nature of what God is to me and what love is and all those
Yeah.
things. And so like and I had to get to a point where I had to let it all go. I had to just similar to you, like what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Were you raised pretty rigid Catholic?
Um, well, I we were Catholic, but not hardcore. But I was raised, as many people in our culture, whether we're religious or not, we're raised with those ideals. That's where
Right.
that's why, like, atheists can still have intense shame about their
What they
sexuality.
believe in who they are and yeah, their
Yes.
sexuality,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they feel flawed. And that's from, cultural indoctrination, whether or not you pick up the belief system, it's infused in our freaking
Absolutely.
water.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Wow.
So, Corinne, if you could talk just a little bit, and we're going to run out of time, and this could be a whole other episode, but plant medicine has been a huge part of what you do as well.
Mhm.
And just talk about why that's important and how that maybe helps with healing as well.
Mhm. Yeah, well, when I had that angel encounter, I think it was within a year where I did my first plant medicine ceremony. So I've always behind the scenes been working with plant medicine, doing ceremony, learning about plant medicine, and for me, it just helped so much, just open up new pathways inside of my heart, and gave me so much support, especially when I started transforming my life, m- you know, shaping my outer life to, I guess, match my inner life,
Huh?
a little bit more. So the plant medicine, uh, not just helped me physically, but also deal with old trauma, which I had so much of,
Mhm.
and I guess just, yeah, connecting with all of that, and again, giving me spiritual support, helping me tune into my angels even more, tune into the land even more.
Right. Right.
So
The
mm,
knowing, the knowing.
exactly. So
It, it-
it was all happening all at once. My not indoctrination, but my deep dive into the earth medicine, along with the soul medicine, all of it was happening at once. So
the,
now it's like it's fun to kind of play in all of those playgrounds with people.
well, because you're deeply connected and like really feeling the knowing, right? That we're talking about. In my experience, the plant medicine helped remove the indoctrination from
Mhm.
me enough to just really experience that deep feeling of connection and know God better and know a lot of other things. It taught me a lot of other things as well. So God, I can't believe we've gotten this far in this episode, Corinne, and you haven't dropped one F-bomb. This is not you.
Are you serious? I haven't said one F-bomb? That's so weird. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Well,
I
that's Corinne because it's
apologize.
like every other word's fuck.
I was trying to keep it clean. Did I cuss at all? Please tell me I did.
It's funny I bring that one up, Corinne. The reason I bring that up is I think my mom keeps a tally of how many times I swear on this. Um, but that it kind of relates. It relates to letting it go and just being you, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're really watching what we say, I think, and Corinne's been a good example to me of just letting it out there. She just is who she is. And I've really appreciated that. So that's why I bring that up, Corinne. So
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad you're tracking my F-bombs. Oh, so you for
I'm
someone who
tallying them
finally
just like my mom does to me.
thank you for understanding me, Brennan. I feel so seen.
Hey, Corinne, where do they find you? And you have a book. Do you have two books now?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Corinne's a go-getter. She has all kinds of stuff out there. So where do they find your stuff?
Yeah. Well, okay, my website, CorinneGrillo.com. You can probably find my books there, or you can find them. I have a book called The Angel Experiment and another book called Angel Wealth Magic. So if you are
Love it.
curious about angels and how to work with them practically to heal your life, heal your bank account, heal your relationships, those are amazing. But yeah, so I do retreats now. Since we've been to Peru many years ago, Brennan, I now have my own retreat center up in Mount Shasta, sacred land up there, and I take people on ceremonies and help them, have a real connection, have that knowing as opposed to believing.
And yep. And so that's CorinneGrillo.com. I'll put it in the
Mhm.
show notes so they can get your link and they can find you
Awesome.
there. So, Corinne, thank you so much for coming on. I just love talking to you.
Yeah. This
I
was so short. We could just go on and on and
I
on,
know.
right?
I know. So I sure appreciate you giving me some time. And you guys, if you appreciated this as well, please leave a review, give a shout out to Corinne, and we'll talk to you next time. We'll see you guys later.